Добро пожаловать! Сегодня 8-й день первой российской онлайн-конференции про embodiment, и я очень рада вас приветствовать на 50-й сессии нашей конференции. Это тоже очень интересно и волнительно. Меня зовут Юля С. Сегодня я буду поддерживать ведущий Херт ван Леeuwen. Его я представлю через пару секунд. Технической поддержкой сегодня у нас занимается Тимофей. К нам можно обращаться в чате, если вам нужна тоже какая-то помощь. И в течение сессии вы можете задавать вопросы. Их можно задавать в чате, можно нажимать кнопку «Поднять руку», и тогда мы включим вам микрофон, и вы сможете озвучить вопрос ведущему. Вопросы можно задавать на русском или на английском. Если нужно, я переведу. И это занятие пройдет на английском языке без перевода, однако к 26 февраля мы подготовим субтитры на русском языке, поэтому у вас будет возможность все это увидеть и услышать уже на своем родном языке. And I will continue in English. Again, hello and welcome to the 8th day of the first Russian Embodiment Conference, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker, the speaker for the 50th session of this conference. It's GERT VAN LEEUWEN. GERT is the founder of Critical Alignment Yoga and Therapy, and today he will be introducing us to this domain. GERT, you are very welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity to explain a little bit about my work. So maybe it's a good idea, and I hope you find it with me, to explore the meaning of the body from my perspective, and also to mention the possibility to change. The way I teach my yoga is with a purpose. The purpose is to receive the possibility to transform. And of course, when we want to transform, or if we want to change, what exactly do we want to change? And maybe we can explore that together. And I'd like to start from the beginning. The moment we are born, our body plays a significant role in the development we make during the first few years being on the planet. And our brain as well makes a huge step in its development. Before born, the reptile brain, the old brain, is developed. And so we can distinguish things like the difference between hunger and being thirsty, between wet and dry, and we alarm our parents or family or educators to give signals that something needs to be changed. But after birth, there will be the next step in the development of the brain, which is the emotional brain. And the emotional brain deals with experience, how we experience the world. And in judging experience, there is one major task of the brain to detect safety. It's all related to safety, to survive, in order to survive. And we do that through reading facial expression, through touch, through smell, through very physical connections. We explore the world through our body because we cannot think. And so these are the tools we have in order to understand that whole connection with our environment in terms of safety. How do we detect safety? That's, I think, a very interesting question. How do we know whether the circumstances we are in are safe? And of course, there are functional signals like hunger and thirst, shelter, cold and warm. When it's freezing, you cannot survive. When you're hungry, you cannot survive. When you're too thirsty too long, you cannot survive as well. So these are very basic and functional feelings which make a relation with the urge to survive. But there's also the social interaction. We are group animals. We rely on others. We cannot survive on our own. So we also need to learn how to detect our safety through relation, through the connection we make with other people. And how do we do that? Well, safe circumstances are feelings which don't give us, which don't produce danger. When I'm empathic to my baby, it doesn't detect danger. When I am giving love to a baby, it doesn't detect danger. So I think when we give the positive feelings, which I call the connective feelings to little children, they develop in a natural way. When you look at the child which receives love and understanding from its parents, it will develop joy and curiosity in order to develop. And it will do so by playing with other children, sharing experiences with other children. And I think that will turn out to be a healthy development. But when parents, due to circumstances, suppose both parents are depressed and they cannot give proper love to the child, then maybe the child doesn't feel respected, and the feeling of love will turn into anger, and it looks at its friends from the perspective of anger and maybe jealousy. So there will be a sudden turnover in our relation with our environment through the fulfillment of the positive feelings which are called needs. Needs are feelings which can be experienced in the body. And we all know that that needs, when they become unfulfilled, that it will cause a situation, and maybe it's hard to imagine by now since we are adults, but when needs will not be fulfilled, like the feeling of love, then the baby or the little child experiences the fear of death, the fear of dying. And nature obviously gave us the tools to detect safety through the fulfillment of needs. And like I said, needs are feelings. And we talk about feelings quite a bit, but feelings come from the relation with our body. The body can feel, words and thoughts cannot feel. So when there is a disturbance in the development of the fulfillment of needs, the brain, the subconscious brain or the emotional brain, will detect unsafety up to a level that the fear of death will be related to that safety. And that's where the surviving strategies come in. surviving strategies. Strategies in order to survive. And that is also related to the idea of life and death. If I cannot survive, I either die, or the fear to die, or I become insane. Those are the two responses to that chaotic moment, which comes from the unfulfillment of needs, the suppression of needs. Then stress comes in. And we all know from psychology and psychiatry that the development of stress basically starts at a very early age. The first 3 years of our development, or maybe the first 5 years of our development, create the foundation of our emotional life. And in those years, we build up images which are related to unsafety, fear, and we create our stress response accordingly. People start to fight, people start to flee, or start to freeze in certain circumstances. So we also know that stress affects us, comes from our social interaction, the problems within our social interaction, and the relation we have with the people nearby. And we talk about the body. I'm a yoga practitioner, I'm a yoga teacher, and I teach people how to release their physical tensions. And I know from my colleagues, yoga teachers, that there's always that problem about addressing the release of tension on the mat and how we deal with it when we go home, when we walk on the street again, when we step out of the yoga studio. What is the relation between the two? Because then we step into the social interaction again, and the brain automatically starts to detect circumstances which may be fearful. We all know that stress also gives the answer to that, because when we feel emotionally unsafe, then the brain will immediately secrete stress hormones, and the stress hormones will raise up the breathing, they will increase the musculature tension, our heartbeat goes up in order to fight or to flee or whatever we want to do. And from a functional perspective, of course, that's a very useful mechanism. When a car is about to hit you, it's very good that you have the sudden energy to jump aside, otherwise it will be your death. We can also learn from those moments that when I'm standing at the side of the road talking to a person, and a car is about to hit me, I suddenly jump away and only realize a few seconds later why I did that. The brain seems to be in constant interaction with my body, with my heart, and with my belly, those sensitive areas. And the subconscious detects the danger, I think 1.8 seconds quicker than my cognitive brain can do. That also happens in life. When I'm walking around and when suppose I'm in my office and my boss is watching on my screen, standing behind me when I'm typing something, that image may produce an image of unsafety, and I start to feel irritated. And actually, without knowing why, the negative response comes in and it will take over and produce negative activities or negative emotions coming from it. Something inside me detects something without me knowing it. And that root of unsafety is built in our early years. So like I said earlier, a baby cannot think, it cannot make use of language, so it scans the world in images. And it sees a certain image, like a body posture or a certain expression. Also voice and sound and smell is included. The advantage of the image is that it can cover a larger range of information than knowledge. Knowledge excludes a lot of information, as we know from traumatic experiences. When people have a traumatic experience, of course, there's so much. Suppose somebody was in a concentration camp during the World War, people which I have met because I live in Amsterdam, close to the area where the Jews were deported to the concentration camps, and some of the people returned to that place again. And I had quite a bit frequent conversations with them. They couldn't express what happened to them, but they had these images in their brain which cover the whole situation they were in. And that's why the event, the traumatic event, very often is exposed in dreams. And a lot of people, of course, wanted to suppress the image by working hard and keeping it suppressed. The problem with those images, however, is that they will never lose their strength. The image will always be as active as when it was shaped. So maybe we have an expression in Dutch, and maybe it's also in Russian, that time heals all wounds, but it isn't true. The wounds of a trauma are not healed by time. Like the person I mentioned, the concentration camp survivor, he lived opposite me, and when he retired, he stopped working, and he said to me, man, all these images come back again. All these traumatic images come back again. And the way I experience them now is even stronger than when I experience them at the moment themselves. I'm only referring to this because the images of safety and unsafety stored in our subconscious, in our emotional brain, are still actively working when we don't change them. So that is part of the work I try to do, to change the unsafe images born from the past, which are still active in our actual circumstances, in here and now, into safe images. Well, what has that to do with the body and with my work? The circumstances we were in when we were young were totally different than the circumstances we are in right now. When we were children, we were dependent. We were dependent to our parents, family, the people around us, our friends and educators later. A little child cannot survive on its own. And therefore, it detects danger in a totally different way than an adult should detect danger. But still, the old images are still actively working in my subconscious. How does an image work? How does an image work? We enter, suppose I will enter stressful circumstances later in the afternoon, and I feel some sort of threat coming from the people around me. Then it produces an image, and an image are the real circumstances I am in, plus the emotional effect coming from it. And I had comparable circumstances, events happening in the past. Everybody has whole sets of libraries in its brain with images of unsafe situations we were in. How does the brain deal with that, with the old information and the new information? It starts to comparison. But the question is, and we all know, and science knows as well, that comparison has been done very roughly. You know, it's like gossip. When people start to gossip about other people, there is some sort of truth in it, but it's not the real truth. So in making comparisons between situations, the brain makes mistakes. It gives a rough description of the situation I was in the old days, compares it with the actual situation, and there is some similarity, but it's not exactly the same. Cognitive behavior therapy makes use of it by making accurate descriptions of the situation you are in. And then the comparison is not accurate. So we judge the situation we are in based on false information. It's fake news, which comes from our past experiences. So, but even if it's fake or not, it will release our stress hormones, my muscular tension goes up and all the rest of it. It will affect my breathing and my stress hormones. When it happens more frequent, then my stress hormones, it will be more and more difficult to release my stress hormones. They will stay at the surface. I'm always alert when the events start to repeat itself. And I become the victim of false information. Well, what has that to do with my body? How can I change? Most people are not aware of that, because the surviving strategies developed very often in a period of my life in which I was not conscious. You know, the first 3 years of my life, I don't have consciousness. I don't recognize myself in the mirror. When I asked my little son just a year ago, he turns 4 next week. But when I asked him 2 years, when he saw himself in the mirror, he looked at himself, he said, "Who do you see?" He said, "Mama." So he was looking at his mother instead of himself. He didn't have any eye sense. He didn't have any consciousness about himself. So in that period, we also, if we're not carefully taking care to within our possibilities and within our own development as being parents, of course, children will always ask more than parents will give, and that's the reason why everybody becomes the victim of stress and strain in every life. I don't know a person without fears. I don't know a person without stress or stress-related responses. So so we don't have, if it starts to develop at a young age like that, we don't have a memory of our body, how it was before stress did his entrance. That's why psychologists and psychiatrists say, well, some personality diseases cannot be treated because there is no memory of the area before the trauma came in. So what happens when a trauma or fear, because most traumas are related to fear, comes into our body, and what does it do with us physically? Well, we all know the posture fear. Fear is we want to hide for, suppose there's violence in my surrounding, or aggressiveness, or somebody wants to attack me. I do this, right? I cover myself and I hide myself. I withdraw from circumstances, from the environment, to make myself invisible. So I'm not here. And we all know that that posture is related to drawing in the chest and making yourself small. And that's exactly what fear is doing to us. The fear to die also gives us the feeling that we need to survive again. The fear to die is paralyzing us. So when I want to make myself small in those circumstances and withdraw, being invisible, and people very often use those words even when they're adults, I wish I was invisible again, I wish I was that again. So in certain circumstances, so we withdraw from circumstances and we paralyze. Well, to be paralyzed is not a good idea in life. We need to go on. And fortunately, nature gave us the tools in order to continue by giving us the surviving strategies. Either I give a response from my own strength, become angry, start to yell like little children do, or I start to flee. I found my other space in which I develop my own safety. Like some people become physically very active in stress responses, and other people become physically very passive and they become very brainy. So that's related to our surviving strategies. Now, the drawing away from circumstances became such an accepted thing in posture that nobody understands that how much it affects us. So it starts here, it starts at the heart region. But the heart region is related to an area in my body. Well, I can show you myself, if you can see me. This is the heart region, and this is the area related to my spine in my body, the area just below my shoulder blades. That is the connection with the heart. So when I withdraw from space, I automatically curve my spine. Now it becomes interesting because from a medical perspective, the upper back should be rounded. And because in autopsy, they see that 90% of all people have a rounded upper back. And so it's obviously a normal development in our posture. But I don't agree. And now I want to become a little anatomical or a little physical, because what is the consequence of that rounding in the upper back? It will affect the musculature. We have that 5, 6, 7 kg of the weight of our head, which tilts forward the moment I curve my spine. The head is moving forward. From a physical perspective, the muscles at the back of my body become longer when I round it. So here they're relaxed. My spine is straight, and I'm standing like a child with the head on top of that long neck in relation with the upper back, which should give support to the heart area. And I will talk about the emotional consequences of opening up in the heart region again a little later. But first I would like to talk about the anatomy. So when the head is hanging in front of our body, the muscles become longer and they need to work constantly in order to prevent the head to fall down. So that is what static posture is doing to us. Most people, when I start to talk about this, start to sit up straighter already. They feel a little guilty that they hang forward, and we all automatically feel the effect of it. But and as a consequence of that, when these longer muscles become tight, at a certain moment, they are the cause of immobility in my spine. I simply cannot move here anymore. And I cannot relax the musculature either, because I can only relax a muscle which can contract. And that's the problem with the lengthening of the musculature and becoming tight at the same moment. It loses the ability to contract. We simply cannot use those muscles anymore. And then we have a problem. And that's why the whole world enters the planet in that straight, open, innocent shape, which is vulnerable in those days when I'm a little dependent child. But when you think about an adult standing like that, with an open chest, with an open belly, low shoulders, a tall neck, a good expression in his face, it radiates safety. So we need to develop a healthy development in the body, is a development in which the safety we received being a child should transfer in the safety given to the next generation. That to me will be a healthy development. But unfortunately, life isn't healthy. So that's what we need to deal with, that there are a lot of tensions and a lot of problems during our lifetime which cannot be released properly. And I started to talk now from the perspective of physical release. So the long muscles in my upper back become tight, and because of that tightness, even it becomes structural strain. It's not functional strain, it's structural strain. And it comes from social interaction, being damaged in social interaction. Not because I cut trees all day, that's a functional thing. But it comes from that disturbances, that fear patterns, which are created in the development of my emotional brain. So when the upper back becomes immobile, how do we deal with that? Actually, anatomically, this is our neck, right? Between the base of our skull and the upper back, this is our neck. But functionally, the neck is way longer. The neck moves up to the area behind the heart region. You can actually see that when I extend my upper back, my neck will move backwards, it will raise, and it will give a feeling of lightness to the carrying of the weight of my head. So the head, the spine, needs the head to create motion again, but because it is immobile, the head cannot move into that direction anymore. Whenever I assessed 10,000s of people the past 40 years, I've been watching to so many structures for all of my life. And whenever I ask people, okay, try to bring the head on top of your spine, nobody succeeded. So and that's the reason it cannot be cured by itself. We need to give proper support in order to create different circumstances in which we can explore the change deeper. So nobody succeeded. So that was the reason that why people during the years in life start from an open posture, then slightly lean forward and further and further and further and further and further through the years. We all have that image of elder people that they tend to curve forward, and at the end they have to walk with a cane. I saw that happening when I was a kid. When I was 17, 18 years old, I worked in a house where old people lived and were taken care of, and I saw them shuffling through the corridors, and it was just the period that I to become interested in yoga and Indian philosophy, and I looked at them, and I had that reference of yoga, that book I was studying in, and I thought to myself, this can be different. And that was a moment of inspiration. I knew I could develop something which people could benefit from in order to change that being totally dependent in your old days. We are dependent when we come to the planet. If we don't change the fear images, we stay dependent to them. And in the last years of our life, we become dependent human beings again. And I want freedom. I'm from Amsterdam, so I want freedom. Amsterdam still has that notation of being the city of freedom. And that's what I try to give to people. And so I thought to myself, if the body cannot change that pattern, opening up to the heart region again, because I'm an adult now, I'm not a dependent little child anymore. So let me open up again. Let me say goodbye to my surviving strategies, because they had a purpose when I was young, because I was dependent. They don't serve a purpose anymore. Isn't it in the transition from being dependent to independence, isn't it time to say goodbye to your stress responses developed being a little child? Of course, nothing in society pays attention to this. So we just carry the burden year after year after year without knowing that we carry a burden, because the survival strategies became our new feeling of safety. And that's the problem with them. Like I said earlier, the little child isn't aware that he is developing a surviving strategy. But I can tell you, living a life in anger is not healthy. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your environment. So we need to change something, although it is difficult, because, like I said, the adult doesn't look to his past saying, okay, I functioned many, many years from my surviving strategies. No, the brain has an unpleasant habit to the moment my strategies become active, because I again feel that I'm damaged in the fulfillment of my needs. So that is the cause of the arise of my negative strategies. Our brain has the negative habit to blame the others. It's always the other person who did it. And it's always the cause of society. It's always the cause of circumstances. So it's a huge field we're talking about. It's the field of life. And there are many layers which are active, become active at the same time, but we need to oversee them in order to want to change them. We need to understand our disorder in order to go through it, instead of putting a new order on our disorder. I don't think that will work. So that's why I talk so much, because I want to explore all the layers which are involved in the whole process of change. And then after change, the real function, and that was the meaning of this conversation or talk, that the real function of the body will start to shine. It will given to you. So I'm sorry that I need to use so much words. So we couldn't change the posture in our body through our own coordination anymore. The upper back needs the head in order to extend, but the head cannot reach that area of the spine because there is immobility. So I thought, if I cannot do it from our own coordination, we need help. So I invented something which I will grab, or maybe you can give it to me. That strap. Yeah.
And Gert, I just wanted to give you a heads up. We've got 15 more minutes for this. And there's also one person who's raised their hand and wanted to ask a question. When would you like to take this question?
Yeah, sure.
Окей. Татьяна, я включу ваш звук, если вы по-прежнему хотите задать вопрос. Maybe not. Okay. Gert, I guess it's over to you with your exercise that you wanted to show.
Yeah. So I'm the inventor of what they call in Russia the planka. It's a rubber strap which can be folded like this, and when you put it between your shoulder blades and lay on it, it exactly gives pressure to the area which I call the source of all our tensions. There is a root of all our tensions, and I think that I explained that this part of the spine starts to curve, and very often at a young age, because we're touched in fear in the heart region. So that fear came from social interaction, the relation with the people around me, which I experience as space. This is the area in which we experience space. When I'm standing on the top of the mountain and I see the view in nature, or when I look at the sky in a dark night in the countryside, and I want to feel connected to that immense space and the beauty of it. When I observe it, I inhale and I become it. Everybody has that experience that when you see that space and when you want to become that space in nature experiences, we inhale to the chest. We don't inhale like that in order to become it. So obviously the relation with space is situated in the heart region. And that's internal. So that is our inner world. I relate to space when I inhale to the back of my sternum, and that movement between my breathing and the skeleton, so my sternum and my ribs, which are connected, they should produce a feeling of space. It sounds strange, but people are afraid for space. And that's why I started to develop the conversation from childhood, that, of course, that opening up towards circumstances, the people around you as a young child, makes you very vulnerable. You open up and a little child is full of trust. But things happen in life and they damage that feeling of trust. So what happens now? I don't open up again. No, I use my strategies. Why? Why does the brain makes that decision? The moment I start to open my body in that region again, in order to experience space, something inside my brain says, don't do that. Don't go there. Because when you open up again, you become vulnerable again. People will hurt you. And that is the overall message in which we build it up, a deep fear, and it may sound strange. I'm not afraid of the external fear when I see the space around me in nature, but the internal space frightens me. And that's what I see all the time when I invite people to lay on this strap. At a certain moment, when I talk them into it, they become restless. And that restless means that they touch the edge of their comfort zone. And what is that comfort zone? That's the old image coming. Of course, it's also related to certain sensations at the back of your body, but the main fear is to enter that space again in which you become vulnerable. That's what the old image says. No, you become vulnerable. But it, of course, it's not true. So, because it's such an easy exercise, it gives me, and we all break our tension at the exact same level. It makes it possible to feel the change for a whole group of people, no matter if there are 10 or 20 or 40 people laying in the hall. We all experience the pressure at the same spot in our body, which gives me the possibility to talk about trust again. People don't trust the space in their own body. And if you don't trust your own body, how can you trust another? I mean, the feeling of trust is not related to one field. It is related to the interaction between yourself, how stress affected you and the relation with your body, and your environment. Suppose I'm afraid for energy. People who freeze are the people who follow the orders. They are. I don't want to blame anything because anyone, but it is a fact that they don't like to go to the edges of their comfort zone. Although they do exactly what you ask them to do, they don't put their energy in them. Why? Because if you don't show the world your energy, either physically or intellectually, then nobody can blame you. You can always hide behind the other. So when you, and that's, I think, 80% of all human beings who act that way. We're afraid to show your energy because when you do show your energy fully, you're alone. You cannot hide behind any other person. Then you are responsible. So when you talk about energy, you release your tension, and when you release your tension, you receive energy from your body. If you don't step into your strategies, you conserve the energy which you normally release to your anger or your jealousy or whatever. So what do you need to do with that energy? So to build up trust in relation to the body, to open up the body, that the body can really start to experience energy again, starts to experience space again, but in safety. So you feel it's safe. Then it will change all levels in existence. I just had a meeting this morning with a lady, and there is a certain exercise in which it's called Utkatasana. As people who know yoga, it's the chair pose, as if you sit on a chair. And she was doing that pose. And she said, you know, every time when I did that pose, I put so much effort in it. And at a certain moment when she followed my teaching, she let go that effort. It's a tiny little movement. So her willpower was not working anymore, and she let go, and she didn't fall. I mean, there was another structure in her body which took over. Something took care of her, and the only thing is that the ease came in. She was not doing anything, but she was still standing in that structure. I said, what did you feel then? She said, well, the first thing I felt was surprise. How is this possible? The second was joy. This is wonderful. And the third feeling which came after that was irritation or anger. Why didn't anyone taught me this before? And I did so many things. I put so much effort in everything I did in my life. And now I feel it wasn't worth the trouble giving that effort to all my actions. Then the overall feeling after that was, you know, understanding. It was a transformation. I said, what did you feel? It was just a slight movement in her legs, in her pelvis. It was a slight release at the side of her lower back. She said it felt like being reborn again. So that little transformation in a physical aspect gave her the feeling of being reborn again. And that's what I tried to express. That is safety. That is the fulfillment of needs. Suppose need can be filled like water in a bucket. And this is the bucket of love. And parents could only fill that bucket up to here. Yeah, you can see. Up to here. So the rest of the bucket is empty. And in that emptiness, I developed my strategies like anger and so on. And my body started to resonate that anger. So I'm not able to feel love fully because anger took over. And in a healthy situation, when there's no fear, when there's no strategies, the body just starts to develop in its freedom in order to carry the internal feelings which come from the fulfillment of needs. And so we are, and that is the beautiful news connected to this long conversation, that we are able to save ourselves again. We are, through the body, we are able to fill our own buckets with needs by ourselves. The people who caused the damage may be not here anymore, but through the body, and that's to me the true meaning of the body, we can have access to certain feelings which are blocked, but we can release them, give them the meaning. And if we start to practice according to needs, why do I want to practice? Not that I need to practice, but why do I want to practice? I want to practice because I feel tired. I want to feel energy. I want to feel compassion towards my body. I want to feel trust in the relation with my body. I want to feel warm and close to my body. Those are all needs which can be related to our environment, but we can also relate it to our own body. When we start from the body and we are in stressful circumstances, but I'm standing in my energy, why should I dissipate my energy and lose it and become the victim of stress? No, I can stand in my own energy, in my own space, and look at stressful circumstances without trembling, without fear. Then I won't automatically become negative in my response using my strategies. No, there will be a delay. And the positive will judge about the situation I am in. And then I will act. But then I will act not to support the fragmentation in the world, the fight in the world, but I will act according to produce unity, even in conflict.
Yes, thank you very much. It is about time for me to give some more organizational information, after which I would love to come back to you for you to give some of your top tips to our listeners and viewers. So yeah, thank you very much. I think it was really valuable what you've been sharing. And I will speak in Russian. Сейчас в чате появятся ссылки на сайт Херта, на сайт йоги критического выравнивания в России и также информация про конференцию. Следующая наша сессия, которая начнется в 3 часа дня по Москве, это панельная дискуссия «Вертикальное развитие и телесность» при участии Анатолия Баляева, Влада Саковича и при модерации Александры Вильбовской. Взаимосвязана ли зрелая личность, взрослость и телесность? Каково место телесности и развития субъективной телесности в контексте модели вертикального развития взрослых, в том числе модели спиральной динамики? Можно ли через телесные практики развивать свои ценностные установки? Вот и проверим. Поэтому вас ждем обязательно на следующей сессии. И в ссылках, которые мы вам прислали, есть полное расписание конференции и также ссылка на записи. Напоминаю, что все записи наших сессий доступны бесплатно до 26 февраля. Они появляются в течение 2 часов после каждой сессии на сайте. Но если у вас есть желание более бережно как-то подойти к себе и к своему времени, у меня, например, у самой вот уже длинный список сессий, которые мне хотелось бы посетить, можно приобрести записи для того, чтобы смотреть их после 26 февраля. И, кстати, те сессии, которые на английском, будут с русскими субтитрами доступны. И когда вы покупаете эти записи, вы также поддерживаете проект «Такие дела», которым мы перечисляем 5% от всех собранных средств. Ну а если вы не собираетесь приобретать записи, просто смотрите это вживую, то у вас есть желание как-то сказать спасибо за организацию конференции, вы тоже можете это сделать через кнопку «Donation». Вот. А теперь я передаю слово обратно Херту для того, чтобы он дал нам какое-то напутствие. Херт, it's over to you. What is anything else you would like to share with us?
Well, there are actually 2 things I'd like to say to finish this. You know, when I talked about the old images, the old image makes a judgment, and it very often makes a judgment from wrong comparison. And of course it happens when I practice. When I practice, I feel certain sensations, and there will be a moment in which I touch the edge of my comfort zone, and I know that on that edge there is a possibility to change the perspective, to go through my fears, to go through my old images, to change the negative image into the positive image. And I want to have a positive relation with my body, and I want to have a positive relation with my environment. So that to me is healthy. So instead of judging, you better question it. Instead of giving a judgment, you better turn it into a question. I become restless. Because it's not good, because I'm over this, tons of reasons roll over each other, and they form from our surviving strategies. They give us the reasons why we should not go any further. But you will never change them. You will never see anything new when you stick to your old judgments coming from the past, either images or knowledge. Then you never see anything new, and you will never see beauty of connection. Instead of, when looking at stressful circumstances, whether in life or during practice, it doesn't matter, it triggers the same things, the same strategy, then instead of judging it, stay silent and turn it into a question. Why does it affect me? Why do I feel restless? And the cause of that, of course, you're triggered by circumstances, but the cause of it is also related to your own behavior, your own images. So turning it into a question, the judgment into a question, is the change from projection, you are the cause for my unhappiness, to self-reflection. And what can I do to stay stable within the same circumstances? And that will be the proper question for me to start to unite. Because like all the philosophers say, you cannot change the world. You can only change yourself. And the moment you are going to lay on that strap, that process will charge. So everybody who takes the courage to lay on that strap changes from projection to self-reflection and develop a healthy body and a healthy emotional foundation to look at stress without being affected by it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gert. That's wonderful. I suppose we can stop the recording now.